Hey guys, what is going on? So a lot of people are very interested in how their lifts stack up to other people, how their lifts compare to their other lifts, how advanced are they, what muscle groups could they improve upon? And I've come upon this pretty cool website that shows you a lot of that information. And I actually found this years ago, but it's very cool to revisit this and kind of see how I've progressed. And so I'm going to show some numbers that I have currently just as an example, and then go back to where I was at 2 years ago to kind of show my progress. But I also think this is, a very good tool, and hopefully some of you guys use this to kind of determine what body parts you can improve upon, what lifts you can improve upon. And again, this is just based on strength numbers, so this is not in terms of development. So I will have some things to say about, which body parts maybe are more or less developed than their value that they're given. I had a friend who it said that his triceps were like his weak point, but he has amazing triceps. So it's just kind of an interesting take. But anyway, looking at, the numbers that I put in for myself, some of these are numbers I've hit. Some of these are just estimates. I tried to be a little bit conservative with the estimates, but if we look at my back squat, I put 535. I think this is probably conservative, but I don't plan to really max out on my squat anytime soon, or even do like low bar squats. Everything that I'm doing is very heavily quad focused. But I felt like that was a conservative estimate. My sumo deadlift, best I've ever done is only 525, which is not that good, especially for my weight. That was at the end of a workout too, so it probably just based on that could be 545. I think this number is going to improve substantially once I start deadlifting again, but for now I'm just doing like RDLs and stuff. Bench press, that's a number I hit back in April. The overhead press number down there is also from April, so those are from the same day actually. And then the incline bench press, that's from January. So these are pretty dated numbers or conservative estimates, but at the end of the day, I didn't hit these like all on the same day or whatever. So, there's a little bit of variation there. I could be a little bit ahead of this. Maybe some of these numbers I can't get back up to just based off of not practicing them from a 1 rep max perspective. But this gives me a score of 105. And this is not to be like, oh, my score is high, because I know a lot of people who have higher scores than me. I had, a few friends go through this. I don't have a pull-up row variation just because I don't have any recent data based upon those things. So I just kind of left it blank. What's really cool is if we look at this and then we go back to where I was at from 2 years ago and just look at some of those numbers and look at the improvements that I've made. So I was at 105 here, which is, my recent numbers, potentially a little bit higher. If we go back to where I was at inputting my numbers from about 2 years ago, my score was only 85.8. So I've put on about 20 pounds to this score. And this is obviously differing weights too. So, I was like 220 back then. I'm almost 270 now. I'm a little bit down because I went through a little bit of a bulking break that I just did recently. But if we look at some of these numbers, obviously I could have improved upon these, which is what I did. But it's like advanced, intermediate with the sumo. Whereas now, if we look at it, it's like exceptional, advanced, exceptional, elite. So we basically just took that one jump from advanced to exceptional. If we could do that one time again and make all of these lifts elite and potentially bring that incline bench press like world class, or if I were to just improve, roughly 20 points, that would bring me right on the brink of being world class again. So that would be a very cool thing to achieve in a 2-year period. And I think my programming and everything is way better now than it was over the last 2 years. So I think I could potentially achieve that. But this is not necessarily to be like, okay, this is something I expect to happen. But I think it's really cool to just look at the progress that you've made and, look at it from that perspective. Look at kind of these objective numbers. And a lot of times we're looking in the mirror or, we're comparing some numbers that are, we're not super satisfied with. But if we look back to where we were at a couple of years ago, it's like, wow, look at the progress that I've made. I think it's a really cool resource. And another thing that they do is they show kind of this legend that shows, what body parts are better relative to other ones. This is the one that I just did based on my recent lifts. And it's mostly advanced, a little bit of exceptional. I think a little bit of it is off, like my forearms, for example, from a development standpoint are pretty good. It's basing my forearm strength off of my compound lifts, which, it is what it is. I think my forearms are pretty strong, but, that's just one of the ways that it does it. But it's like, okay, based off this, I really want to work on my posterior chain, my legs, I guess my abs are weak for whatever reason. My upper back could use some work. And then, my upper chest apparently is really strong just based off that incline number. And if we go back to, where I was at before, it's kind of this same, ratio. Yes, I've improved upon all these lifts, but this same level of, what areas are strong versus what areas are relatively weak, it looks to be exactly the same. So based off of these numbers, it's like, hey, maybe you should work on your low back, your posterior chain, your legs a little bit more. And I don't think that that tells the whole story because I have a lot more data that I know about. But this kind of puts it into perspective of like, okay, I'm just reinforcing the strengths that I have based on the way that I used to be training. Whereas how I'm training now is much more so, lower body focused than it used to be, focusing on my back more and stuff like that. And, either way, we look at these as like, hey, my upper back could use some work. I think that could benefit a lot of my lifts. So it really just kind of puts things into perspective. And it's not the end all be all. Again, these are all just based on strength numbers, not necessarily, your actual development. And if you're focused on bodybuilding and not strength numbers, maybe this is something you wouldn't even look at. But I think it's a really cool kind of resource to use, especially if you're comparing numbers that you currently have versus old numbers. If you have logs of that stuff, I think that's very, very cool. And I would encourage you guys to try it. If you guys, have your numbers, your scores, I would be very interested to hear where you guys are at and what you kind of learned from going through this, because I feel like it's a very kind of insightful exercise that you can do. And now I'm just going to keep this bookmarked so I can come back to it every few months or so and see, what improvements I'm making. I think it's a really good resource, and I just wanted to share it for those of you who have not used it. Very, very cool in my opinion. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I will keep you updated, and I'll talk to you soon.